So I wanted to have a chat with you today about building the right thing, so idea discovery and first steps. I'm an indie app developer, so an indie app developer is someone that just makes their own apps and releases them to the App Store. So what I want to do probably goes a bit of audience participation. It's just the beginning bit, so the online audience probably won't see it, but I'll relay it. I'm hoping that everyone who has ever had an idea to build their own app could put their hand up. So if you've ever had an idea and you wanted to build your own app, put your hand up. And if you've actually built it, keep your hand up. If you haven't built it, put your hand down. And if you've released it to the App Store, keep your hand up. If you haven't released it to the App Store, put your hand down. Not many hands are going down. And if you've generated revenue from it, keep your hand up. If you haven't generated revenue from any apps, put your hand down. So there's probably four, five people in the audience who have generated revenue, 5, 6 from the audience that have generated revenue from their apps.
Clarify, good revenue or just...
If you've made $1 from it, you're ahead of 99% of all people that have released on the App Store, I reckon, or at least had the idea and never actually executed on it. So my name's Adam Lyttle. I'm an indie app developer. I also do YouTube content. So I'm a father of 5, and this is my first time doing any sort of presentation or speech, and I've been invited to do a few more of these, so I thought, what better way than in Melbourne to give it a shot and get acquainted with it and, and start. So people ask me, what do you even do? And when I say to them I'm an indie app developer, the first thing they do is like look at me and think, so you do like freelancing, or you work for someone? Like, no. I make my own apps, I put them on the App Store, and people pay for them. And the next question I get is like, are there any apps that I would know of? And I said, no, you probably, unless you use like a currency converter that just pairs US dollars to pesos, or you're doing a fish identifier app, or you're scanning the value of your trading cards, probably haven't heard of any apps that I've done. So when I started out building indie apps, I was $200,000 in debt, and now my portfolio in total is earning about $80,000 per month from App Store sales. And when I tell people that, the first thing they do is how, and the answer is very, very simple. I turn energy drinks into code. But in actual reality, when I set out to start my business, I named it App All Day because all I wanted to do is get to a stage where I could just build apps all day. And now I'm sort of living that dream. And what I love to do now is I create content on YouTube to help others with that passion to build their own apps and build the confidence, either as a side project, to pay down debts, or to do it full time. And over the last few years, I've been doing this now for 5 years. I've got a 3-step process that I use. So coming up with ideas, validating the market, and then building a minimal viable product. What I discovered building apps, like I built over 50 apps. That was a couple of years ago when I last counted. I've built far more than that. Most of the apps have just flopped, so there hasn't been any success, and some of them have been successful. So the key seems to be not only coming up with the idea, but then also working out whether anyone's even going to download the app in the first place. And coming up with ideas, you don't have to overcomplicate things. So I thought when I first got started in app development that I'd have to come up with like the next Facebook or the next Uber or the next big idea. But it turns out if you're building consumer apps, you don't actually have to have a massive idea. You can just have like lots of little ideas. And these consumer apps are just small single purpose tools that people could download and then use. So for example, one of the apps that I built is just a pairing of currency between US dollars and pesos, and I built that in a day, and when I released it, every month after I released it, it's been paying my rent. And the best ideas actually have come from my own personal life, my own personal experience. Before doing app development, I was running a lawn-mowing business. Prior to that, I was doing web design. And when I was doing web design, I was making websites, doing good money with it, and then services like Square and Wix came out, and all of a sudden I wasn't doing very good with it, and I had over $200,000 worth of debt, all my vehicles repossessed, and it just collapsed. So I wanted to go as far away as possible from building apps from the computer or anything like that. So I set up a mowing business and decided if I want to get fresh air, if I want to be outside, I may as well get paid to have a lawnmower in front of me and just walk around outside mowing lawns. And while I was doing that, I found myself sort of circling back a lot in a lot of the same areas that I'd visited before. And I was trying to work out the best way to work out my route from job A to job B to job C, and also trying to work out how to manage contacts, how to manage invoicing, and how to manage quotes. I had all these different systems all over the place, but nothing that was just in one place. And I'd ask other blokes that were mowing lawns, I'd say like, hey, how are you actually tracking your jobs? How are you invoicing? And what are you doing? And their response in seriousness was, we have a piece of paper in the truck, we put the piece of paper up, on one side is all the jobs we have to do this week, flip it over, and next week is all the other jobs, repeat. And I said, well, why hasn't someone made an app that tracks it? And one of the guys said to me, well, if you know someone that can make apps, you should tell them. And I was like, well, I could make an app. So that's the first app that I created, managing my lawn mowing business. And one of my most successful app series is like these trading cards, the Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, those sorts of trading card games. And the kids loved it. They're really into it. And they would sit in front of YouTube and they would watch these influencers open up packs of Pokemon cards and then show the value of them. And they were like, oh, that's the card that I want to get. And that's how much that card is worth. And I was like, why don't you just download an app, take a photo of the card, it checks on eBay, gets an instant valuation. My kids were like, well, there's no app that exists like that. So I built it, and these apps have paved the way to generate a lot of revenue for my business just from the ideas that have come from life. Then on to the next step, validating the market. So any idea that used to come to mind, I just used to build, and I wasted a lot of time, and most of the apps would just flop. But some of them worked, and I was trying to work out what's the correspondence, why are some apps working and some apps are not working. And it turns out the apps that were working were just really easy to find on the App Store. So people would search for a keyword, they would find the app, they would download it. I wouldn't pay anything in marketing, wouldn't pay anything to sort of get a constant flow of users. So I thought I'll focus on this App Store optimization thing. And now I use tools like Astro and App Figures, and these are tools that let me determine the popularity and the difficulty of a keyword. And basically what I would do is if I have an idea for an app, I'd type it into these tools and just find out whether these keywords are showing up at all, how many people are sort of downloading it, whether it's a popular keyword, and how difficult the keyword is to actually rank for. And then I look for a popularity over 40 and a competition under 60, and that was the nice sweet spot. It gets enough volume to get enough people using the app and downloading it, and enough, not as much competition, so it's easier to rank for. And this has saved me months in development time, trying to sort of come up with the right, working out which ones are the right ones to target. And then the third step is building the MVP. So MVP is the minimal viable product, and that's just like the version 1.0 of the app. And when I say minimum, I mean like really has to be minimum. No bells and whistles. When I release the first version of the app, my objective is entirely, can it get any traction? So can I get it ranking on the App Store? And does this actually solve the problem that I'm trying to solve? And I know that by if people are actually going to keep using the app. In fact, I don't even include any in-app store purchases on the first version. My entire objective is, does this stick or doesn't it? And if it gains traction, I'll then build on it and then add more features. And usually the features come from the actual users of the app who in the comments or the reviews say it needs feature X, needs feature Y, and then I'll build that functionality into the app, and usually that's the part of the app that I'll monetize in the future once I've added monetisation. So in final thoughts, what I've learned across my journey of being an independent app developer is that ideas are just everywhere. If you're sitting in front of a computer screen and you're thinking about ideas while you're coding or while you're doing a to-do list, you're always going to come up with the idea being like, I'm going to make the next to-do list app, I'm going to make the next. But for me, what I found is actually the best ideas have actually come from listening in the real world, seeing pain points in the real world, and then integrating that, checking first to make sure that there's actually people wanting to download the app, wanting to use the app, and that it's not too competitive to target. And then build fast and test early to get that feedback loop so that you find out whether people actually want this app and what extra features people want in the app anyway. And what I've also learned is you don't need to build the big next Uber or the next Facebook to actually make good money out of this. You just have to build something valuable that people will use. So in my opinion, indie devs can still win in 2025. And I thought what I'd do is, if anyone has any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer any questions about being an indie developer, if you've got any ideas or need any help with App Store optimization.
Hi there. Have you noticed some unusual patterns? Let's say it's super simple app without beautiful design and still rocketing as high as possible, or vice versa, it should be always nice, good-looking app, and without it you cannot make it.
Should the apps always be really good looking, are you saying?
Basically, yeah. For success, is it can you get success without beautiful design?
I think you can, but what I love about Swift UI is you can actually just build with the components already in Swift UI, and it works really nicely and looks really nice straight out of the box. Previously I was building in like React and JavaScript, and you have to design every single element from scratch, whereas Swift UI sort of gives you that shortcut to quickly design apps that flow and look nice as part of the iOS ecosystem. So I think generally if you stick to the core principles of designing for like an iOS app, it doesn't have to be the most beautiful and exciting looking app in the world, but as long as it's a familiar experience, people know how to use it. I guess that's the point, the usability of it. If the design of it impacts the usability, then perhaps isn't going to be as successful. But if the usability is good and you're just sticking to the iOS core foundations and fundamentals, then it's going to be easy to use and gain traction. Some of the apps that I've developed, especially in the early days of building, were very embarrassing when I look back at them now, and they still got traction and they still generated revenue.
Hi. Firstly, I'm a big fan of you, Adam. And my question would be, like, in your experience, how do you feel, or does like competitor who making like similar app like your affect the revenue? For example, like fish identifier, you make it, right?
Yeah.
But they're like not like in later month there are a bunch of them making it similar to you. How does that affect your revenue overall? And secondly is the evaluation of the money that you charge the user. How would you determine that? For example, as someone like me haven't like make any money, then how would I know how much should I charge the user? Yep.
Yeah. That's a good question with regards to the competitors, because I see that directly all the time. The second that I release an app and I tell people that I've released an app, all of a sudden I'll get like 5 copycats spinning up overnight. And to be honest, it hasn't actually, at first when it happened, I was really concerned that it would impact revenue and it would hurt sales. But as it turns out, it hasn't. As long as you're first in that space, or one of the first in that space, and you get a good sort of hold on the App Store optimization, and you also offer like you're passionate. Now that's the other thing I think talking about as well. You're passionate about building it, and you're passionate about creating it, and you've poured your heart and your soul into it. It almost becomes, even if someone does copy it or a competitor does pop up, the attention to detail that you provide it, I think people recognise that a bit more, and people are more likely to stick with you. So I haven't actually found in the App Store that the competition has impacted my revenue at all. And when it comes to those the fish identifier app, that's one that I've talked about quite extensively. And when I first built it, I think there was only like 2 or 3 on the App Store. And now I would say there's probably over 20 on the App Store, and it hasn't impacted my app in the slightest. And then the other question in regards to monetizing the right price. What I've been doing, I used to have I've tried the lifetime purchase, so you purchase and you have it outright. I've tried annual fee, but the model that's been working the best for me has been a model that's been quite popular on the App Store now, which is a weekly offering, like a weekly trial and an annual trial. And I don't like to subscribe to apps, and I don't like to have to pay for apps. And I'm an app developer who makes a living off subscriptions, so it's weird to say that. But so I was hesitant to put weekly subscriptions in there, because who would want to pay for a weekly subscription? But like over 80% of people that sign up for a subscription on my app sign up for the weekly versus the annual. In fact, I think the stats are even higher than that. And I don't exactly know why, but if I was to make an educated guess, I would think that people see a weekly commitment as less than a longer annual commitment, even though weekly over time costs more. And I thought that people would just switch over to the annual once they're using it more, but only like 5% of people actually switch over to the annual. So it's been eye-opening experience. But when it comes to monetization, the strategy that's worked for me that I put into every app that I build now is the weekly option with an annual option as well.
I have one follow-up question regarding that weekly subscription. How many people cancel after a week of free usage, or?
Usually people
like
will cancel after 3 to 4 weeks, I've found. So I price it so that the annual subscription is sort of the same price as 3 to 4 weeks of the weekly subscription. And then that way, whether they choose to go with a weekly subscription or the annual subscription, it's still the same amount of revenue that's coming in. But adding the weekly increased the number of people subscribing to the app in the first place. Even though they're kind of spending the same amount, more people were subscribing.
Thank you.
No worries.
Hi. When you publish the app, you need a valid web page. Do you have a web page for each app, or do you just have the one page where all the apps live?
I've created App Gallery, appgallery.io. So it's a free service that anyone can go into. You create an account, and then you put your you search for your company name in there, and then it automatically updates. So every time I was making a new app, I had to make a new website, do all of the stuff, create all of the real world website stuff, and I wanted a tool that would just be one place where everything would land, and then it would update automatically. So it keeps an eye on the App Store. Anytime I release a new app, it automatically gets added to App Gallery.
Okay. Another question. So indie developers, you need to be a coder, a marketing person, a web developer. Do you do all that, or do you get support from other areas that we pay for type thing?
I do it all myself. So
Okay.
I think it's primarily the coding side that has been the biggest part of it. But now with AI coming into it and ChatGPT, I've seen that coding isn't the defining factor what makes people successful anymore. It's that ability to market it, or that ability to actually know what product works and to sort of start building it. So coding used to be a barrier, but no longer a barrier. But you still need to, I think if you just generated an app using AI and release it, it's not going to be the best quality. So you still need to have that product eye, or just work through it on a human level to sort of work out what works from a usability perspective and how to market it as well.
Thanks. Pat.
Got a question from the online audience. I think you might have covered it off a little bit, but from Mevin, how do you go about UI, UX for the app ideas? Do you get inspiration from any existing apps, or do you hire talent from freelancing space, or do you just do your own spin of things?
How do I do the
Where's
UI
your
and
inspiration
UX
come from,
and
I guess, for
inspiration?
UX?
What I do is I don't look at any competitors and I don't look at anything else. I've done that in the past and it's really changed my opinion of what the app should look like. So when I come up with an idea or I want to build something, I will just visualize how I would actually want that to work. And then that way I get a fresh perspective on it in a way that probably if you copy a competitor or you see what a competitor's doing, you're going to sort of be inclined to think that's the way to do it. Whereas when I've developed apps and come up with my own flow of how it's going to work, I found that it's a bit easier to sort of come up with fresh ideas and a fresh take on it because you're not actually doing it the way anyone else is doing it. And then when it comes to actually designing the apps themselves, it's just like we were talking, just building it in Swift UI, and then the first instance of it is usually really clunky and horrible to use, and I kind of just obsessively use it even when I'm not coding it. I use it in real life and then play around with it. I'm like, oh, I could have done that better, I could have done this better, and over time as I'm playing around with it, I will work out different flows of doing it. So when it comes to like design, I'm kind of designing on the fly when I'm coding.
So I want to ask you, like, how do you marketing your apps? Like, how do you make it, like, people know your apps and download it?
People know my apps just through the App Store. So the target market that are using the apps, well, 99% of it, well, I don't know the exact percentage, but most of them are finding it through the App Store. And then one way that I implement into there to get other people using it is what I like to call shareable moments. So you have an app, you've downloaded it from the App Store, so you found it on the App Store through the App Store Optimisation. That's the first way of getting people using your app. And then when they're using it, if there's a moment in the app that they want to share with a friend, instead of them taking a screenshot and sending it to a friend, what I do is I create a share button, and when they share it with a friend, then it's got like the logo of the app down the bottom and the name of the app. And that's worked really well for like the card value scanning apps, because then like someone's done a valuation of the card and they're sending it on a public group or on Facebook or to a friend, and then it has the logo down the bottom. So not only do you have the initial downloads, but then you get like a bit of virality, a bit of growth from it.
Thank you.
No worries.
Back again. I think earlier you mentioned you had a YouTube channel.
Yes.
Did you plug that, or was it up there? Your YouTube channel?
It's just it's Adam Lyttle Apps, and it's there's a logo there, but my head's over it. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's my YouTube is Adam Lyttle Apps, and my Twitter is Adam Lyttle Apps as well. So if you type my name into Google, you'll find all my socials. So I think that's that. I'll hand it over to Pat.
Thanks very much.